Located on the coast of Massachusetts, this picturesque island attracts many tourists each year due to its rocky coastline and beautiful beaches.
Gloucester, Massachusetts was first settled in 1623 and incorporated into a city in 1642. The city is known as America's oldest seaport and still has a bustling fishing industry today. Gloucester is like a donut. Civilization represents the outer part of the donut, and Dogtown, located in the center of the island, represents the donut hole. The most populated regions of Gloucester are located along the coastline. Even though Dogtown is located in the center of the island, very few people venture here, and it is very isolated.
At the end of June, St. Peter's Fiesta will be set up here in St. Peter's Square. This festival is a tradition throughout the Italian community. It includes a carnival and local festivities such as the Greasy Pole and the Seine boat races. This event attracts locals and tourists alike. While Fiesta is a very popular event in Gloucester, many people overlook the other aspects of the island, such as Dogtown.
Why did you name your store Dogtown Books?
When I opened the store 17 years ago, we wanted a name that had something to do with the local culture, and we thought that there was a parallel between the vanished settlement called Dogtown and the vanishing culture of books in society. And so Dogtown it was.
Do you know anything about the history of Dogtown?
I know a little bit. I'm not an expert on it, but I am asked that question almost daily. My answer is that Dogtown was the first white settlement on Cape Ann, and it was chosen because of the need to power a grist mill. A grist mill grinds dried corn, which you cannot eat, into ground corn flour, which you can eat. Don't try chewing dried corn. However, after 100 years, the economy was no longer a subsistence economy. They were trading for food, and the mill was no longer that important, and so all the activity moved to the harbor.
Have you ever been to Dogtown, and if you have, what were your experiences?
I've been to Dogtown a number of times, but again, I'm not an expert. My experiences in Dogtown have always been positive because it's a place to, for me, it's a place to walk with kids, with family, enjoy the beautiful vegetation and peacefulness of the place. definitely not a subscriber to the occult aspect that some people are try to impose on Dogtown. Ask 100 people on the street what they do when they go to Dogtown, and you'll find people pick berries, hike, bike. That doesn't sell books, but that's the fact. It's occultness I don't subscribe to.
Thank you. In the center of the island lies a dense woodland known as Dogtown. Dogtown holds a rich history with stories of death and enchantment. Settled in 1642, Dogtown experienced a century of prosperity from 1650 to 1750. There was once a road that connected Dogtown to the rest of Gloucester, and it was a place where the most prominent families lived, so they could escape from the threat of pirates. It was also a good place for agriculture and the timber industry. The decline of Dogtown occurred after the families moved out to the harbor, and this was because of change in economic conditions and deforestation. There was also a lack of pirates and a victory in the Revolutionary War, so there was no longer anything to be afraid of. Once an extremely populated and lively area, it is now abandoned woodland that is isolated from its outside community. Even though it is isolated, it still remains connected to Gloucester through its art and technology.
Well, I think Gloucester takes our history seriously, and those who grew up here, from the waterfront to the fishing industry, the granite industry, we like our history, we like our roots, and Dogtown is a big part of Gloucester's history, and it's great that it's an area that's preserved. There's two reservoirs, the Babson and the Goose Cove Reservoir, that surround it. And hopefully the city will protect that land for a long time to come, so people can enjoy the open space and learn about the history that is Dogtown.
The Babson boulders can be found all throughout the woods of Dogtown. The inscriptions of inspiring words give hikers and bikers advice on everyday life situations that they can take home with them. When creating these boulders, Roger Babson said,
Another thing I've been doing, which I hope will be carried on after my death, is the carving of mottos on the boulders at Dogtown, Gloucester, Massachusetts. My family says that I am defacing the boulders and disgracing the family with these inscriptions, but the work gives me a lot of satisfaction, fresh air, exercise, and sunshine. I am really trying to write a simple book with words carved in stone instead of on printed paper. Besides, when on Dogtown Common, I revert to a boyhood which I once enjoyed when driving cows there many years ago.
Dogtown is no longer the bustling community it used to be. Since there is no civilization in Dogtown common today, the plants have become very overgrown. When Alyssa East ventured into Dogtown, she described the foliage. The farther we went into Dogtown, the more overzealous flora of all sorts grew across the path. Milky sap dripped and oozed as we cut away at growth, which seemed to start growing back as soon as we were done hacking away at it. It seemed as if all the plants in this place were closing in on us. The lazy-looking trees were going to start walking at any minute, too.
Marsden Hartley was born in 1877 and died in 1943. Hartley was a famous American painter who painted in many different styles and a wide range of subjects. Throughout his life, Hartley traveled across the world to paint and share his work. In the 1930s, Hartley created the exhibition Soliloquy in Dogtown that was inspired by the time he spent in this abandoned settlement. According to the article, Dogtown Show captures a landscape of loneliness, written by Sebastian Smee in the Boston Globe. Hartley fell in love with Dogtown when he was feeling forsaken himself. He was an early orphan and gay at a time when homosexuality was feared, suppressed, ridiculed, and persecuted. He identified with the landscape in a way that renewed him, rather than reinforcing his depression. Dogtown was an isolated area where Hartley could feel peaceful and free. Marsden Hartley went to Dogtown to seek isolation, yet his art connected him to the world. Hartley's work can be found in galleries across the country. Hartley was an inspiration to many. Alyssa East was one person who found Hartley and his artwork motivational. After learning about Hartley and seeing his paintings, she decided to explore Dogtown for herself. East wrote a book about Dogtown, her experience there, and the murder that occurred there.
Peter Hodgkins was a Gloucester local who was known throughout the community, but people often thought of him as odd and shy. He was very connected with Dogtown and spent a lot of his time there. After a long search for Peter Hodgkins, he confessed to the murder of Ann Addy and was arrested. In 2006, Alyssa East had the opportunity to sit with him at the Massachusetts Correctional Facility at Norfolk. She described him as an extremely likable person full of childlike love and tenderness for Dogtown, and that he had the kind of vulnerability that could turn extremely dangerous.
Well, I remember Pete. When I was a young kid, he was always in the woods. He was always driving up my street, either on a dirt bike in one of his cars, when we were walking through the woods or when we were up there. He was always around. He could be a little intimidating. He was over, I think he was close to 6'6". He tall, quiet. He was a little scary, but he never really bothered us too much. I remember when the murder occurred, I can remember the police, state police, lots of activity around the area. It was a tense time until he was caught, and once he was caught, everybody was put at ease because we knew it was the work of just one person, and it wasn't anything we had to worry about after that.
Throughout Dogtown, there are maps on the sides of the trails, and these maps include QR scanners. This allows hikers to scan the map with their smartphone. While this prevents people from getting lost in the woods, the constant connection with technology and society also prevents people from being completely connected with nature.
June 15th, 2014, 5:30 p.m. I was riding my bike up the Commons Road and I came to Dogtown Square where I encountered 6 people staring at their phones and their dogs pacing beside them. When I asked them if they were from the area, they quickly told me no, but that there was a man ahead that seemed to know a lot about the area. But I reassured them that their ignorance of the area was exactly what I was looking for. I explained to them the project that I was working on with my partners, and I asked them how they had heard about Dogtown. Their response was that they had been kicked off of Wingersheek Beach with their dogs and just wanted a place to walk them. One of the ladies said she had walked the paths before, but that all the others were newcomers. Another told me that the only things helping them navigate was the QR codes, and they quickly hurried on their way so they could experience the area before dark. Within my 3 trips through Dogtown, these were the only living creatures that I came across other than snakes and inchworms. Their not knowing the area helps strengthen that Dogtown is isolated and unknown by tourists.
I have lived less than a mile away from Dogtown my entire life. However, before this project, I had never ventured into Dogtown. Going into Dogtown was a great experience. There was something about being surrounded by nature that made me feel at peace. I could understand why so many people before me came here to seek isolation. However, there were a couple times on our journey into Dogtown that I remembered that we were not the only people in the woods. While my group members and I walked through Dogtown, we found evidence that we were not the only humans who decided to explore this abandoned settlement. For instance, we found sticks tied together to form a teepee-like formation, remnants of a fire, and dirt bike tracks left behind in the mud. When we found these things, I began to feel uneasy, especially after reading about the woman who was murdered by a stranger while walking through these woods. Another time I began to feel uneasy while in Dogtown was when the leader of our group, the one with the map, told us that we were going in the wrong direction. In those 2 separate moments, I began to realize how isolated we truly were from society. My group explored Dogtown twice, and both times we made it out safely. I am glad I finally had the opportunity to explore Dogtown, and I would not hesitate to return.
Moving here just 3 years ago, I didn't know much about Dogtown before starting this project. After I read Alyssa East's book, I became interested in the history of Dogtown and wanted to learn more. As we began our adventure into Dogtown, I was a little nervous because of Dogtown's past and its isolation from society, but as the trip continued, I began to feel more secure in the woods. The 2 trips we took into Dogtown were inspirational and peaceful, and being surrounded by the woods made me feel more connected to nature.
I think it would be a shame if local people ignored Dogtown because it is such a wonderful asset, right, at their doorstep. I mean, it would be like if no one went to the beach.